Hello, and welcome back to the second part of the graded assessment for Chapter 6, or the guided assessment. So we're starting on Step 7. So previous to that, Step 6, we were to close this query. So I'm going to close that. And you'll notice that that is here. And so it's given us different symbols for the different types of queries we might have. So we've got make a table, and we've got an update type of query here. So step 7 says make a copy of the make discontinued products table query and save it as an append discontinued products table. So I'm going to do a right click here. I'm going to hit copy and I'll hit paste. Wants us to give it a name, and we will change that to append. Make sure you get your spacing and everything. Discontinued products table. And before I do that, it looks like I don't have this one spelled correctly, so I'm going to do a right click on that, hit rename, click on the end, and then I can fix that name. So it should be make discontinued products table. Okay, I'm happy with that now. So this is the one we just made a copy of, and it wants us now to open this. So we'll open in design view. All right, so I'm going to click no here, click design view, make this a little smaller for you to read. Convert the make table query to an append query. So we're going to click this button here, and the query will append to the discontinued products table. All right, so that would be this table here. Okay, so we haven't run it yet, but then it says modify the criteria to add Boston crab meat product to the discontinued products table using the supplier ID from the products table. So we've got supplier ID. So before I progress, I'm going to open up this products table, and I'm going to notice that the Boston crab meat is 40 for the product ID, but the supplier ID is 19. So if I go back to this query here that I am making into an append query, the supplier ID here is going to be 19. We're assuming we're only getting one item from there. Remove the criteria related to the discontinued field. So I'm going to just erase that. Run the query, save it, and then close it. All right, so let's read this again to make sure we're doing it correctly. It says modify the criteria to add the Boston crab meat product to the discontinued products table using the supplier ID from the products table. So that's what we want. So I clicked on create. When I did that, I got this design tab to come up. And now I can get to make sure it's still append. And so we're going to run it. It's going to add one row to that table. All right, now I need to close it or save it. And then close. Close this as well. Now, it added that or appended it to this table. So if I look at that, notice now I have another row added to this table, this discontinued products table. So that's how we do an append type of query. Step 9 says make a copy of the append discontinued products table query and save it to delete discontinued products. So I'll do a copy here, and I'll do a paste, and now we'll just change that to, make sure I get my spelling right, delete discontinued products. And that was scary, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's correct. Don't want the table on there. Now it says open the delete discontinued products query in design view. So we right click, go to design view, convert the append query to a delete query. So now we're looking for delete. So we see it. So now we've got that. Step 10 that says modify the criteria to delete discontinued products, as well as the record for Boston crab meat using the supplier ID. So there's a hint, there will be two criteria. So where discontinued equals yes. So we've got this, so we're looking at where supplier ID is 19, and if it's discontinued, it'll be yes. So this is an and. Run, save, and close the query. So we're going to run it. So there aren't two rows that match. And we may not have to come back and edit this if we lose points, because the way I read it is it's an and. We're looking for, it has to be marked as discontinued and supplier ID 19. So it's saying that based on what it's seeing, it's not going to delete any rows. So as I read that again, it's not really asking for, it has to be marked as discontinued and 19. It's probably discontinued and or 19. So I'm going to hit no. And I'm going to put this yes on an or line. So let's go ahead and run this now. Hopefully that'll work. If not, I got to go back and run everything over again. So create, design, let's delete, we're going to run. Now we're going to delete 4 rows. I'm going to hit yes. And we're going to save. And we're going to close. I must have skipped step 11. So step 11 says open the profit query in design view and add the last name field from the employee table to the last column of the design grid. Run, save, and close the query. And this is where my hesitation was of trying to figure out what do they mean by that query, because last name wasn't in there and I'd have to build my own query again. And so by adding last name, we'll be fine now. Notice here we've got profit is a column that's built by taking unit price times 1 minus the discount times quantity minus, scroll on over, product cost times quantity. So that's a very elaborate formula there. And so you may want to look at that just so you get a feel for how they did that. So I'm going to close that in, and we're supposed to put in the last column from employees, we're going to add last name, show that in our query. We're now going to run, save, and close. Run, here are all the last names. We're going to save, and then we're going to close. And now we can do the query wizard. So step 12, use the query wizard to create a crosstab query based on the profit query that shows total profit by last name. So we're going to create query wizard, crosstab. We're going to do queries. We got this profit. It says the value you want is row headings. Our row heading is going to be last name. Click next. Our column heading that we want is going to be category name. Click next. Name the query profit crosstab. What number do you want calculated for each column and row intersection? What we want is profit. And we're going to name this profit underscore crosstab. That's what we're going to name it, so it looks good. We want to modify the design because that gets us into step 13. And notice here it says row heading, column heading. And we want the category name as row heading and last name as column heading. So then we can run, save, and close the query. So we're going to change this to column, change this one to row, and now we can, notice it's got the crosstab selected here. We can run. So now we have by category name, we have the total profits, and then we have the last name total profits there for each one of those. And we're going to save and close. All right, so now we're on to step 14. Create a query to find out any products that have no current order details. Add all of the fields from the product table to the result. Save the query as products with no orders. Run the query and close it. So I'm working on step 14. So create a query to find out any products that have no current order details. So what I did is I went to the database tools, I looked at the relationships, and we want to do products and order details. I created a query for that, and hopefully there it is. And I put all the fields in there, and then I also put the product ID from order details, and you see that there. So what we want is we're listing all the products that do not have any order details. So this is where we would put is null, which is a function that's looking for, there's no value associated with this product ID under products here. Save the query as product with no orders. Run the query and close it. So I'm going to hit save. That's going to do the dialog box to products with no orders. We'll hit OK. Now I'm going to run it. And we see there's nothing there. So we've got this query set up. If I run it now, notice that it returns blank record. But I know there should be at least one match where there wasn't an order detail for one of the products. So if I go back to my design view and I click on this relationship here, notice currently it's set up so that it only includes rows where the joined fields from both tables are equal. And that's the reason why we got a blank, because that product ID existed only in both of them. It didn't list the ones that weren't there. In order to do that, you need to think about which one you don't want to match. So in this first option here, we're going to include all the records from products and only those records from order details where the joined fields are equal. So if we use that one and we click OK, we hit run, we see now there is a record that didn't match. So that answers our question for that step. I believe it was 14. So at this point, we're ready to save the database and see what kind of errors we have. And so that ends this guided lecture on this Chapter 6 Access assignment. Be sure to read this chapter. There's a lot of good stuff in the Access database.